Washington, D.C., be in Lafayette Park across from the White House on Saturday, December 12th at 11 a.m. to stop the Obama-Pelosi-Reid escalation of the Afghan war. Peace organizations that do not protest Obama directly, now that Obama is the warmonger-in-chief and butcher-in-chief and escalator-in-chief and decider-in-chief, he's supposedly the commander-in-chief, if you can believe this character. Those who do not protest Obama directly at the White House by name to his address are simply exposed as shills for the Democratic Party, shills for the foundations, foundation-funded fakers who are not worth supporting. So if you've been giving money to some peace organization, you should make sure to see if they show up, if they contribute to this emergency anti-war demonstration. And the idea is to get that on the scoreboard, to send out the announcements so that you're at least having some weight thrown into the scales against the warmonger party, which dominates the White House, with the well-known warmonger Rahm Emanuel, former member of the Israeli Defense Force, who's now running the White House. So in Russia today, I was talking this week about, obviously, that the Taliban charges against the CIA are more than plausible. They're practically an open and shut case, and that then should lead to a greater awareness in Pakistan, which is what Reuters is worried about. The other thing now, we're told that the Pakistani army has successfully advanced into South Waziristan, and that simply means that there is a civil war, and that those fighters, the Pakistani Taliban in particular, have fled to other places, right? Maybe they've fled back to Peshawar. Maybe they're back in the Swat Valley now, that the main forces of the Pakistani army are in South Waziristan. The other thing is the Taliban of Pakistan and the Taliban of Afghanistan, not the same thing. Taliban in Afghanistan seem to say, get out of our country and we will leave you alone. You leave us alone. We'll leave you alone, you foreign invaders. Whereas the Pakistani Taliban, much more colored with this al-Qaeda rhetoric, the caliphate, the worldwide mission, the creation of the Ummah in the entire world. So this indicates that the U.S. British intelligence agencies are more preponderant in the Taliban on the Pakistani side, so much so that the Pakistani Taliban have been criticized by the Afghan Taliban. The Afghan Taliban say, hey, you Pakistanis who call yourself Taliban or are labeled Taliban, you should stop blowing up civilian targets because we don't do that. And notice it's the same method you saw with the Zarqawi, so-called al-Qaeda in Iraq, in reality a creation of General McChrystal. Good background on all of this, if you can read German. Christoph Hörstel's excellent book, Brandherd Pakistan, the hearth of fire in Pakistan. In other words, the source of the flames is in Pakistan, and goes through the obvious roles of the CIA, MI6, the ISI, the various Mujahideen organizations on the ground. Now, shifting over to Iran, a lot of pressure on Iran. We're told that the nuclear talks with Iran have broken down to some extent, that the Iranians say they will not send their uranium out of the country to be enriched. They had originally excluded France as an enemy state under Sarkozy. Of course, that's what it is. Too bad. But not even Russia is going to be enough, they say now. So there's a meeting in Brussels of the 5+1, the permanent 5 of the Security Council, plus Germany, always a big player in the Iranian economy. And we're running up against these artificial lunatic deadlines that were set by Obama, right? The end of the year, well, it's almost December. What's going to happen? Now, let me stress, I still don't think that the main thing is going to be an Israeli attack on Iran. I'll be quite surprised. But I think what you've got to see is that Pakistan, a much bigger and more important country, is 3 times as big or 2.5 times as big, with nuclear weapons, with a whole series of other things that Iran does not have. That's the target, and that's one of the biggest Islamic countries in the world, if not the biggest. So Pakistan at the top of the hit list, and that's going on every day. So all the people who are worried about an attack on Iran, more you should worry about an attack on Pakistan, because that's happening basically all the time. Now, we'll talk a little bit about Obama in the Far East fairly soon, but just in terms of Obama's meeting with President Hu, how ironic. These two that are making nice at the Great Wall and the Forbidden City and Beijing and all this, they are enemies in a proxy war inside Pakistan, because China is supporting the government in Islamabad, and Obama is supporting the Taliban, who are trying to wage civil war and destroy the central government in Islamabad. So all of the nonsensical diplomatic kabuki dance in the Forbidden City means nothing, because these countries are essentially clashing on the battlefield of Pakistan. And the only reason the U.S. does this is to remain a player in a region where the U.S. has nothing to offer to anybody, and the only way they can influence things is to prevent, sabotage, disrupt peaceful economic development. What's so threatening about an oil pipeline from Iran across Pakistan into China? Well, that's the number one thing. They also don't want a pipeline from Iran across Pakistan into India, because that would essentially set up economic cooperation, a rational basis for Iran, Pakistan, and India to face their real problems instead of the problems that have been used to divide and conquer by the State Department and the Foreign Office for these many years. Barkey, we're told, Obama is freaking out about all the leaks about his 8+ meetings of his saber-rattling war council. So there we have this entire strategic thing. Now, in the background, let's also pay attention to the question of the dollar, because we're looking at a time now where dollar, oil, and geopolitics in some ways come together. The backdrop of Obama's trip to the Far East is the tremendous weakness of the U.S. dollar because of the trade deficits, really. The U.S. merchandise trade deficit is an even more serious problem than the federal budget deficit. The trade deficit is inherently harder to control because you're dealing with other sovereign entities in the world. So the backdrop of this is we saw that there were attempted support operations by a group of central banks in the previous week, as we reported. Support operations to keep the dollar from weakening too much, to support the dollar so that their own currencies, right, the Taiwan, South Korean currencies, and some others would not be priced out of the market because they're so expensive compared to the U.S. market. So we've got the chief executive of Hong Kong saying he is scared by the Federal Reserve 0% monetary policy, and well, he might be. We'll be back in a minute.